Hello and welcome to the Booker Prize podcast with me, Jo Hamier.
And me, James Walton.
And on the 21st of May, 2024, at the Tate Modern in Bankside in London, James and I were at the International Booker Prize ceremony.
Yes, we were. And we thought normally we, at ceremonies, we run around sticking microphones up people's noses.
Yeah, we thought we wouldn't do that
We
this
thought
time.
we wouldn't do that. Much better for us, really. We just enjoyed the ceremony, and we thought we'd reflect on it in the light of day. To be honest, the following morning, so it is the day after. So, Joe, did you have a good time?
Well, I was worse behaved than you because you brought your car.
I was a pro to my bootstraps, Joe. I knew we had a podcast the next day, a couple of glasses of sparkling water. I know, rubbish. I was wise in a way I never used to be wise, which is, slightly disappointing.
Really?
But anyway, you had a jollier time than that.
Yes. I had a great time, actually. I think the Tate Modern was a very interesting choice of venue. I mean, it's weird because you've got all those exhibits upstairs and you really, really want to go upstairs and see them. But then the party downstairs is just actually quite lovely. And it had all the usual Booker staples. There were canapes, there was gossip between speeches. There were a lot of influences this time.
It was. I met having a smoke outside. I must be honest with two women in publishing who said, and this was meant as the greatest compliment they could possibly think. They said this party is very unpublishing,
Yes.
which meant it was quite glamorous and quite fun. Would have been even more glittering when we arrived if I hadn't been absolutely hosing it down.
Yes, but you're right, it was very glamorous. This year, the ceremony was sponsored by Maison Valentino, and the academic and culture writer Shahada Bari was hosting the most sort of glamorous, glittering black dress that sort of shone every time she caught the light on stage. And she said something about it being only right that writers, publishers, and academics take off their corduroy trousers and elbow patches from time to time and have a proper party.
There's quite a few women bristling at our table.
I bristled too.
Yeah, I
I'm
thought you might have
exceptionally
bristled.
well dressed all the time.
And she also said that everybody, the plasmort had been so perfectly done that everybody would fall in love with the person on their right, which would have been quite confusing, wouldn't it? It meant that everybody was in love with someone who wasn't in love with them.
I actually did fall in love with the person to my left.
Ah.
I'm looking at my hands to figure out right and left. That tells you all you need to know about the night I had. I was sat next to an actress and influencer called Tanya Burr, and I believe she's just started a book club on Substack, and they've been reading Crooked Plough, which is very lovely. And she was so happy to be there. She was telling me that her mum's an English teacher and that she grew up with her mum reading to her, and also that she sort of postponed and then eventually ended up not going to Leeds University for an English degree. So it felt really nice to be at the Booker at last, which is really, really nice to hear.
It is quite spectacular, isn't it? They do sort of lights and music, and it is
the
pretty
smoke
show.
machines, there was a lot of
Yes,
smoke.
there was a lot of smoke. At one point I fantasized that people were smoking, but it was just smoke machines, wasn't it?
Yeah, well.
So there was a lot of that, lights, music, quite a bit of showbiz, and then, of course, the biggest moment of them all, which was the announcement of the winner. And I think we have a clip of that here.
It gives me great pleasure to announce the winner of the International Booker Prize 2024 is Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck, translated by Michael Hofmann.
So, Joe, were you surprised that it was Kairos?
No, I don't think anyone could be surprised. And actually, while I was going around the room prior to dinner and just after, everyone from the literary editor of The Guardian to the literary editor of the Financial Times, Fred Studeman, friend of the show, and of The Guardian, it's Justine Jordan, who will be judging, as she puts it, the Monoglot Prize later this year, actually is in the process of judging it. They all wanted Kairos to win. Although, do you know what? Last night I had a dream that we came in to record this episode and I brought 2 hats for us to eat. I'm not kidding. I would literally hand you one and go, James, this hat is for you and this hat's for me, and we've both got to eat them because we didn't manage to get it right this time.
We went with Notting River, but I think we did agree in our, as I say, I don't think in our toadying book away, all of the books, there wasn't anything I would have been outraged to win. And it was a really, really strong shortlist.
Yeah.
I probably should say, if it's not too late, that our plan for this podcast is not just for me and Joe to, chat airily about the amusing exchanges we had last night.
About all the champagne and the glitz and the glamour,
right,
darling.
Yeah, in an annoying way. We've done that already now because we're going to be interviewing the winners, because of course it's a prize for author and translator. We know that. In fact, Booker's so well trained. There was someone from Booker there who had a pile of one of the books, and she had 2 pens, one for the author, one for the translator, because that's what the prize is for. And in this case, so we'll be speaking to Jenny Erpenbeck and Michael Hofmann, and we'll also be speaking to Fiammetta Rocco, who's the administrator of the prize. So I don't know if she's quite discreet, but if we can just see what anything from behind the scenes, and also a chat more generally about literature in translation.
Hey, and now we are here with Jenny Erpenbeck and Michael Hofmann, this year's winners of the International Booker Prize. How are you feeling?
Yeah, how should I feel? If you win such a prize, you are happy,
Mhm.
you are honored, and you cannot believe that it's true. And yeah, so it's one of the good days in life.
Perhaps don't. I perhaps don't believe it. I mean, I feel a bit giddy, I think. Lightheaded. I think it's lunch on an empty stomach.
God. Well, so many people must be asking you about the day and the next few months ahead, but I'd really love to know from both of you what you were doing before the announcement was made, at the ceremony, leading up to the ceremony. Did you have a good day? Did you talk to many interesting people?
So I came the day before I came back from LA to Berlin. And I had a short moment of being at home and unpacking the suitcase and packing the suitcase. And then I left the next morning for London. And then I was happy to just stay in the hotel room. And that was it, to get some sleep.
Have some
Yeah.
peace.
Yeah.
Getting just losing it. I think that the days seem to get progressively better. I think. I mean, it did. You are living in a cloud of anxiety. But I think once we sat down at our table together, and there's a sort of feeling of being in a lifeboat, something like that, and at least your ship may have gone down, but you're still in company, and there's something very consoling about our table and everyone's presence there.
And but you presumably don't enjoy the meal particularly. You must just think, just announce it already.
You give up. You become passive. You become sort of institutionalized, and the lights throb and the music keeps going throughout, and then you get this sort of synchronized wait staff doing their thing, and you become you become deeply passive.
I mean, you both seemed so surprised on stage. Did
It
you
wasn't
think
just a stage thing. It was that we were deeply surprised in life. I
Yeah.
think.
This is our profession, to be surprised.
Yes, why were you surprised? Did you think who did you think was going to win?
Perhaps not the river.
Okay.
I was, I read only a bit of it, but you never know. There are many good books on the short list, and I have read only like 1.5 or something like that. You cannot judge yourself, and then you don't know what to expect and what the criteria are to choose this or that book. And I think the best you can do is not to expect to get the prize. This is what we really tried hard, so that we didn't expect it in the end, and we were surprised.
Yeah. I mean, at first I thought I had, when we were shortlisted, I thought I would read the other 5 and sort of try and second guess the judges and be kind of completely sort of, I don't know, ready for whatever it was. But then it became Plan B, which was not to read any of them. I'm a sort of Murphy's Law guy. You think the butter slide down.
Okay. Well, Jenny, here's a question that I'm sure been asked loads of times already, and will be asked so many more times over the next few months. But can you just say a bit about the book itself and how it came to be?
Yeah, the book is at one hand is a love story between a married older man, like what means old, in the mid-50s, as I am now, and a young woman, not even 20, she's 19 when she meets him. And then on the other hand, it's also a story of the last years of East Germany before the fall of the wall, fall of the wall happens without, without
So you don't need to
being
spoil it.
described in the book.
Yeah,
It just happens. It's
don't,
in the
don't need a
background.
spoiler alert for that, do we? The Berlin Wall falls. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not a big deal. No, it's not in the center of the book. It's just in the second half somewhere, and then the years after the fall of the wall follow, and what starts as a like only love story in the beginning turns into a political story towards the end. So it gets mixed up also in terms of the subjects that I'm dealing with, truth and lie and betrayal, and the hopes, the despair, the disappointment. So and all these different kinds of voices are mixed up in the book. And
Can
yeah.
you remember the moment that you first spotted that the sort of arc of a love affair could also be the arc of the history of East Germany in a way?
Yeah, actually, I started with the history of East Germany, but I thought this is no story, and I'm not a historian, so and in a way, I wanted to avoid the love story, but somehow it got into the book, and then it became like the major issue.
Michael, I'd love to know at what point you first read Kairos.
I think I must have read it before it came out, pre-publication, which is something. I mean, I don't do many new books, nor am I offered many new books. But it was really an exciting thing to read this. I think probably on my computer, which I hardly ever do either, because there was no time to send paper, and I read it as an attachment, knowing that this book would come out in August or whatever it was,
something like
like
that. Early autumn.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it just felt like a sort of like a completely and it had a huge sort of whoosh to it. And it I mean, personal, political, but it's not a sort of Vargas Llosa sort of deliberate sandwich type book either. It's more the way sort of things leak. It's a sort of osmotic book that the personal leaks out into something more general. The political leaches into the personal, and just I mean, so that something like kind of corruption or something becomes a theme, and the keeping up of something that no longer exists.
Well, can I ask how, as a translator, you see your relationship to Kairos? Do you view yourself as a reader, a co-writer, or do you?
I think I'd say an enabler.
Yes.
I don't see, it hasn't become my book. I've given a lot to it, but in a sort of mostly impersonal way, I think. I mean, in terms of constructions and little bits of English diction, bits of English rhythm, bits of constructions that I mean, I did think I have a horror of repeating myself, and I did sort of kind of swear to myself that once I become aware of my verbal limits, and that I'm using the same words again and again, then I will hang it up and stop. But I guess that hasn't quite happened yet. But what there is of, I mean, I'm also, I suppose, an enabler of English, and I want to sort of show off what English can do. It's not a personal showing off. It's a kind of impersonal sort of performance.
Just to turn to the book. So, as you say, the love affairs between a guy in his 50s, married, also very cross when she is unfaithful. On the face of it, he's the bad guy. Did you regard him? Well, both question for both of you really. Did you regard Hans as a villain or not, or nothing quite so simple as that?
Naja, what I tried to do, at least, perhaps in the end, it turned out that he's the bad guy, bad guy in the book. But in the beginning, I hope at least that he seen as he is seen by Katharina, the female character, in the during their first weeks, as a charismatic and interesting artist. So he's a writer himself. He works for the radio, so he has something to offer to her. So he's not only the bad guy. And what interested me is that in the course of the book, the power is shifting. So first they are on a kind of equal level. So he's the one who knows everything, and she is the beautiful one, and so it's like an equilibrium in a way. But then when he starts manipulating her and making her feeling guilty and using this feeling of being guilty to keep her in the relationship and to put pressure on her, then of course he is the one who is stronger. But in the very end, when the political things are changing, he's losing his job, and all of a sudden he's the poor guy in the end. But of course, until then, everybody has at least once hated him. So you have to adjust your feelings again and again, and I think this is interesting.
And is that again a sort of parallel with feelings about East Germany itself?
Yeah, there is not this one feeling. You can think in many ways about this country. There some things were bad, some things were good, and you have not this strict black and white picture in it. You have to be open to a more complex view on all the things.
No, it is. I mean, it is a sort of a dynamic book. I mean, the relationships are dynamic, and the country, the national theme kind of pushes itself in more and more until by the end. I mean, they're over, but the things are still happening to the country.
I'd love to go back to something you
Mm-hmm.
said about your work as a translator.
Mm.
You said you love to show off what English can do.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
did that relate specifically
Yeah.
to Kairos? What could English do for
Um,
Jenny's novel?
I mean, to my way of thinking, English is a sort of a subtle language, an understated language, an economical language. Sometimes really a kind of vainglorious, kind of peacock language. And I think all of those, thanks to Jenny, find a role. So there are sort of moments of flaunt, but lots of things. There's something sort of sly. I mean, I think it's also duplicit. I mean, I've sort of said this thing which probably had too much currency about it being a language for spies, which may come into things. But it is a duplicitous language. It's a way of not saying what you think and leading people along and retaining your anonymity. That seems to be a big thing in England, while unmasking people you're speaking to. And in that ways, I think it's a very kind of useful language for Kairos.
And but you grew up in Germany. German is your
I
first
left
language?
Germany when I was 4, but with German parents, East German parents. My father worked as a German lecturer in English universities, and then in other countries. But we spoke German at home. I had a kind of horrible childhood in England as a little German boy. When it was all the post-war culture in England.
Don't mention the war, except they did.
No, post-war England. I mean, I don't know when it was over. Maybe 71. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Common Market. Maybe I don't know. It sort of went on and on and on.
No, it did. Yeah, I remember.
So I was sort of teased and bullied and whatnot. But and I would have happily, if I could have dug a hole and put German in it and buried and covered it up, I would have done. But I kept it too long. And when I was sort of 16, 18, I started reading German books. And when I became a writer, like my father, who was a German novelist, it then became a way of sort of filling in the time between poems.
Did East Germany register for you? Was that?
It's where my family was from, and where my grandmother lived, where my uncle lived, and where I went to visit. And it always felt like a more historically loyal place. I mean, you went to East Germany, and because there hadn't been the money to fix things and tear them down and rebuild them, you were in direct touch with 1900, with 1880, with which I thought was wonderful. And I had by then I had acquired an English liking for kind of old places and old atmospheres, and somewhere I think that meets the kind of the intactness and slight rundownness and seediness of East Germany.
Jenny, I think the part of the book that I was most struck by happens towards the end when Hans is giving Katharina tapes that she has to listen to side A and side B. That there are so many ways he could have tortured her, but the tapes are quite specific. I wondered why.
These are tapes about how terrible she is.
Yes.
basically.
I always had this idea that Katharina is sitting with the headphones on her ears while outside the revolution is taking place. So she's not taking part in like the upheaval, but she's just doing her private stuff, and she's literally like caught in this acoustic space. And I thought this, also I had this vision that I will end up with this scene, and in a way the story goes on, but still, and I thought it's a very it's not a physical torture, but still it's something that really puts a pressure on her because she has to deal with it. And the interesting thing is that I think I had it like 7 tapes in the book, and in the second part of the book, but she always reacts in a different way. So you can the tapes more or less always say the same things. They put the guilt on her, and why did you do this and that, but she is developing self-consciousness slowly. So she's reacting, and in the beginning she is just suffering and crying, but then she in the with the last tape she doesn't pay any attention anymore. She resists. She gets angry, or she's listening to it, but without any. She's not willing anymore to take this guilt.
She manages to break free.
You grew up in East Germany, did you? Until it ended.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very interesting to me. This is what I made this point when we were discussing the book. But East Germany lasts longer than the Weimar Republic. The First World War, the Weimar Republic, the Nazis, the Second World War, all put together, and yet it's become a sort of vanished blip in a way. Would that be fair? I mean, one of the recurring phrases in the book is, "Can you bury the past?" No, but the West has done quite a good job in burying East Germany. All of its, I mean, one of the things the book does is to recreate its museums, its artistic, its cultural references, and so on. Is there a resentment that this proper country that, as I say, lasted a long time, has just been completely written out?
Naja, the East Germans are still there, as the Nazis were still there when East Germany started. This is also something I deal with in the book. So the people are there, and their feelings are still there, and to be seen also in the right-wing movement. There all the things that perhaps went kind of wrong 30 years ago come back to us now, and we have to deal with it. So as Christa Wolf, my famous writer colleague, put it, so the past hasn't passed, and is not gone, and is not. Also it's like the present is also this what we call past. And
there's a William Faulkner line which is, the past is not history. In fact, it's not even past.
Yeah, it's not even gone. Yeah, it's not even past. Genau.
And you also write with feeling, I think, about how ruthlessly the West absorbed the East. They weren't actually protesting for full-on capitalism so much, but that's what they got, and they got it very, very quickly.
Yeah, the interesting thing was there were people who opened the door, and there were other people taking over. So like the Easterners themselves, they voted for becoming part of the Federal Republic. So it was not just the fault of the Federal Republic. So our own people voted for becoming Westerners, but as it turned out, they couldn't become Westerners so quickly as they thought. They were not so well accepted as they would have expected it. So I met many, many readers in the course of my life as a writer who would like in the West who would say kind of secretly, I'm an Easterner, but I have been living here for 15 years now, but I never said so. They would hide themselves in a way. So they stayed, in a way, they stayed unseen in their with their experiences and biographies, and they were also being like put aside from positions that gave you the power to make decisions. So the elite was changed. The people who are in the media are mainly Westerners, until now. So this is not the story of the past.
So you were warned by last year's winners, Jorge Gospodinov and Angela Riddell, that you won't have much time for your work.
We didn't think it was going to be us.
Is there anything
did not.
that you'll be looking forward to over the next year?
We're full of dread and
That's the spirit.
I was looking forward to get some writing done.
Oh, no.
I think you could shelve that for now. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking to us. It's been wonderful.
Really
and
enjoyed it. Thank you.
Congratulations again.
That's been great to have you.
Thank
Good luck with the year ahead. Hope you manage to squeeze out the odd paragraph here and there.
Okay, thank you.
So, Joe, there we had Michael Hofmann and Jenny Erpenbeck, the winners of the Booker Prize, this International Booker Prize this year, 2024. I mean, they were great, weren't they? It was quite a speedy interview because they had to be whisked off to appear live on French TV. So
It's very glamorous.
it is glamorous. I kind of wish we'd had a bit longer with them, particularly as they were. I think it must be quite nice, without blowing our own trumpet too much, to be interviewed by people who've actually read the book and thought about it.
You're going to make us enemies, James.
But
will you?
I'm sure the people on French TV, live on French TV now, possibly will be some of the news anchors and things, won't they?
Oh, God, I could have spoken to them for
I
hours and
know.
hours.
I'm so interested in that German stuff as well.
I think they've, as a pair as well, they've got this incredibly calming presence, despite how hectic their day has been. We heard they didn't get time for breakfast. They had a 7 a.m. pickup, but so considered and cool.
So I'm glad. It reminded me, I've very occasionally been a bit of a showbiz interviewer in the sense that there's some sort of Hollywood star in a hotel bedroom and you all get 10 minutes each in a big long
Yeah.
line. So it isn't quite that, but they're in hot demand.
Yeah.
And so, in a packed programme tonight, as they used to say on the two Ronnies, it's one for the teenagers, as they say. Anyway, we got Fiammetta Rocco, who is the administrator of the International Booker Prize, so delighted to have her with us. We spoke a few weeks ago, didn't we, about the international
Seems
long
like
list.
ages ago.
I know, with Eleanor Wachtel, the chair of the judges. I think you were off submitting a PhD, impressively, weren't you, Joe?
Yeah. Well,
So
half of it.
I flew solo on that podcast. So how did last night go from your point of view, anyway, Fiammetta?
Oh, it was fabulous. I loved it. It was wonderful. It was glamorous. It was cozy. It was red carpet and Sunday lunch, all mixed up together.
You come on to sort of showbiz lights and music and things when you're introducing it. Do you enjoy the showbiz side of it?
I practice a lot on the dog beforehand. I get a lot of help writing my speech, and then I practice on the dog. Seriously. The dog could probably do it better than me.
How was the judging process this year? I know you can't tell us everything, but was it, there's always, this year's judging panel in particular was gorgeous and they did seem very convivial and calm, but was it always going to be Kairos? Were there any, other close contenders?
So it's very interesting. Every panel is different. Unlike the Goncourt, we have a new panel of judges, fresh every single year.
So the Prix-Goncourt, which is France's leading literary prize, that has the same judging panel every
They
year?
have ongoing,
didn't
there's
know
some judges sit on it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But the Booker is different. Both Bookers have fresh chair, fresh judges every single year. So you can't really see a pattern of how they're going to behave or how they're going to get on. A lot of it at the beginning is on Zoom. Then they meet, there's a different chemistry every single time. The big thing this time was, and we hadn't expected this, because there are no quotas on submissions, we ended up getting 149 books in, which is really a lot. That means that for the first 5 or 6 months, they're reading practically a book a day.
You're right. That really is a lot.
It really is a lot, and it has, it can sometimes look from the outside as if it's a sort of cull. Of course, there's a process of elimination, but what we encourage the judges to do really is to find the books that appeal to them. Not every book is going to appeal to every judge or every reader, but every book should have a chance of finding its ideal reader. So it's really more, we like to say it's more a quest than a cull. Find the book that appeals to you.
James and I noticed when we were discussing the shortlist in our previous 2 episodes that there seemed to be a kind of thread running through them around memory or retrieving the self, archiving the self, whether in an individual sense or in context of a nation. Is that something the judges discussed explicitly once they were whittling down to the shortlist?
There was a lot of discussion about how long it takes to get over history. What happens? And I think that was prompted really by an initial discussion that there was a lot about rupture, whether it was in families or whether it's in relationships or whether it's in nations, because we had Kairos, of course, German book. We also had a great Korean book. These are countries that have been sundered for decades and are still trying to, well, certainly in the case of Germany, hasn't happened in Korea at all, but in the case of Germany, still trying to put themselves together. So there was a lot of talk about that.
So, Fiammetta, is there a kind of sense of relief for you when you realise the judges are going to get on, or does it all?
You never
always
really
happen?
know whether it's lovely when they get on, but you never know whether the getting on is going to last. So it's not entirely a relief.
Okay.
The real relief is when they finally come to the very end, pick their winner, and haven't come to blows and still talking to each other and actually really, really, really supportive. And this year it was fantastic. I mean, I don't think it's a secret because Eleanor Wachtel said it at the press conference, so I think everybody knows now, but it only took them half an hour.
Oh my God.
To pick the winner.
Oh, wow. That's...
And that included the discussion.
I mean, that's surprisingly quick given the strength of the shortlist. I really like Kairos, but I really liked quite a lot of them. I think I might have held them up for more than half an hour.
I have to say that even having sat in on all the meetings, I didn't expect it. So Kairos came in quite early on. The books come in, they're numbered. All the judges read the books by number, so they'll be discussing the same ones, 1 to 25 the first month, 26 to 50 the second month. And Kairos came quite early on, and there was not quite a feeling, do we really have to go on reading? But there was definitely a feeling that here was a keeper.
Yeah.
Of course, you don't know what's still to come down the pike, so you don't know whether it's going to be thrown out at a later stage. But I do remember that feeling from the room that they had come upon a really important writer.
Was there any advantage to where you come in the running order? I was listening to a podcast about the Eurovision Song Contest the other day, and basically there's never been a winner who went in the first top 10, or hardly ever.
If they came early or late?
Everybody who wins is someone who was on late in the show.
Oh,
that's quite interesting. So the judging process starts out quite slow and quite warm and very generous. And as they get stuck into the reading, they become tougher.
Yeah.
And happier to throw books out.
There must be a feeling.
And then they go back, and then of course everything sort of straightens its way out. But you do get that feeling looking back on the very first meetings. What were we thinking putting that book through?
Yeah, okay.
I'd love to ask how, for the International Booker in particular, you choose judges. I know that with the main prize, it's sometimes been described as fantasy football, but when you're looking for judges for the International Booker, what qualities are you looking for in them? I mean, you gave a really moving speech yesterday about translated fiction's capacity to bridge it's you put it much better than this, but bridge borders, reconstruct worlds, create a kind of intimacy. Are you looking for people who value that, who show evidence of that in their own work, or?
I think if you believe in reading, you believe in reading as a power of good. You believe that that's implicit anyway. What are we looking for? We're looking for people who won't just read and then speak their own views, but really listen to other people. They have to be prepared to have their minds changed, their minds opened, to be changed by the power of somebody else's argument, because everybody reads books differently. I suppose the main technical difference, if you want, is that because with the International Prize, the prize money is divided equally between the author and the translator. There is always a professional translator. And as you hear, when you hear Michael Hofmann speaking, he's not just a writer and a poet and a teacher. He's a translator. He's written a lot about translation and has been the inspiration for many, many young people to come into literary translating. And he does think about language in a very, very particular way. And all the translators who've been on the panel are like that. As for the broader panel, you have to have a chair who is going to be inclusive, who's going to bring in the people who find it a little bit harder to be heard in the room. You have to have judges who, as I say, are not just prepared to speak, but prepared to listen. And so, the cloth-eared bully has no place in that room.
How do you research if someone's open-minded? I mean, do you know what I mean?
We talk to them.
So
we talk to them beforehand.
Is there a sort of semi-interview process then?
Not really, no. But people come with an aura or a reputation. If it's not actually a strict reputation, though, you do get a pretty good nose for somebody who's not going to be a good listener.
And if you spot a cloth-eared bully...
We do make mistakes occasionally.
So can you give us a full list of the cloth-eared bullies? Okay, Fiammetta, traditional last question from almost everybody. What happens next? Because we see you do the International Booker Prize. Did your thing last night. When do you start on the next one?
We've started. We
wow.
have next year's panel.
What?
We have a fantastic chair. We've got 5 brilliant judges.
Can we scoop this?
And
are we allowed to?
not quite.
Oh.
Give us a few weeks and we'll give you the heads up.
Okay, that'd be great. And I've so enjoyed the whole experience of it this year at Fiammetta, so thanks so
Good.
much.
Well,
Thank
I'm
you so
delighted.
much.
Okay, Joe, well, that's the end of our special for the International Booker Prize 2024. Obviously, a special thanks to our guests, Michael Hofmann, Jenny Erpenbeck, and Fiammetta Rocco, all of whom were great. And that brings us to the end, not just of this particular episode, but of our first season of the Booker Prize podcast.
I know.
So I thought we might just have a little sentimental looking back. I mean, it's been fun, hasn't
it? No. Yes, it's been the best. I think about how far we've come, how unsure we were of each other when we first walked into that room.
We have majored on this a bit, but we are different in generation and obviously gender and everything. Yeah, I had a little nickname for the podcast when it first started in my head, which was the Gammon and the Snowflake. but then, did I never tell you that? but then.
We should rename the whole thing.
But it turns out you're not a snowflake, and I'd like to think, for God's sake.
No, I mean you've got a bit of red now. I presume out of embarrassment, but generally you're quite even-toned, James.
I just gave that away.
Why am I making you feel better about this?
But that would have been a good name for a podcast. Well, possibly, or possibly not. But any particular highlights stand out?
Oh,
I mean, I think just getting I like the ones we just do together, to be honest.
Yeah, I think our solo ones. I think standouts to me have been our episodes about DBC Pierre, about the shortlist for last year's English speaking prize. I really enjoyed that because I think there was such a sense of dread. It was the first time that we had to conquer an entire shortlist, but we pulled it off very smartly. And I think it's actually our best, if you were going to go back, if you're only just joining this if you're only just joining us for this episode, last year's shortlist episode for the main prize, I think is a kind of exceptional example of why you should be listening to this podcast.
We were singing our song then, but I think I've enjoyed almost all of them. And then we've had some really good guests too. We've spoken to George Saunders, for goodness sake.
Yeah, he was great.
So anyway, it has been a pleasure working with you. And should we do our usual sign off?
Yeah, it's been lovely working with you too, James. And also, we should say our gorgeous producers, John and Kevin, who have also made this such a joy, who've tackled logistics, who have not shouted at us whenever we came in. I say we, me, hungover or late.
Yeah, no, it's a big thanks to John and Kevin from me too, of course.
And you can also find the Booker Prizes on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Substack. And you can find more at the Booker Prizes website.
Oh, and that's it for this season of the Booker Prize podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We've had a blast, and we hope you've enjoyed it half as much as we have, and all the usual showbiz stuff. Thanks very much indeed, and it's goodbye from me.
Thank you for listening. It's goodbye from me too. The Booker Prize podcast is hosted by me, Jo Hamier, and by James Walton. It is produced and edited by Kevin Moyolo, and the executive producer is John Davenport. It is a Daddy's Super Yacht production for the Booker Prizes.